Hi there. My name is Sifiso Falala. I represent the AGA, which is the African Genius Awards. Today, we are honored to be hosting the very competent, the exceptionally talented business person, Sarah Luyele Njamu, from a business called CompuConnect Education, who happened to be one of our partners at the African Genius Awards. So welcome, Sarah.
Thank you, Sifiso. I am truly honored and excited to be here. And I'm looking forward to just a great conversation.
I know I've met you before. I have the privilege, and perhaps those that are watching may not have the advantage that I have of knowing what you do and what you've done before. But you are a tech entrepreneur. Can you explain to maybe just the average person what a tech entrepreneur is?
A tech entrepreneur is somebody who is involved in a business that deals with digital solutions or software programs. A lot of people, when they hear tech, they like to equate it to software. So in a layman's language, it's really people that trade in technology systems or software systems. And yes, sometimes it does involve hardware, but we are very focused on the software side of things.
And how did you get into this rather exciting field? What made you get into it? It's something that is unusual. Most people do not get into such a field.
Yeah, so I suppose it was a curiosity coupled with just opportunity. So I come from a teaching background. I've worked as a high school mathematics teacher. Then I moved into lecturing mathematics and ICT, and that's where the love for ICT started. And about 20 years ago, I started studying for my MBA. And when I was done with my MBA, I thought I wanted to try something new outside the realms of classroom settings, which I had thoroughly enjoyed. I had thoroughly enjoyed lecturing ICT and mathematics to mainly technical students. It would be students that would be studying your engineering or your construction programs, and we would come alongside and equip them with ICT skills and the mathematics, because at the time, the concept of ICT integration within the education system was just beginning. So when I studied for my MBA, I graduated, I decided to get into the private sector. And lo and behold, my first job in the private sector was with an edutech company. And because obviously I came from an education background and coupled with my technology skills, I did very well in that space, loved it. And after a while working for a private company, I then started my own business in the tech space. So initially we started as an edutech company where we sold education software to the education sector. So it was mainly, your private schools because they had the facilities. And later on, we started supporting the governments. And then the corporates came on board as e-learning became a big thing. So we would get into organizations to help them with developing the e-learning solutions, and the clients will keep on asking about other solutions if we are able to support them with other areas. And so as a result, we just found ourselves organically expanding from the edutech business into the automation, into the artificial intelligence, which is now our biggest part of our business. Automation and artificial intelligence is our biggest drivers.
I've completely understood everything that you've said. And I love the fact that you are in this space. And what fascinates me is that all the skills that you mentioned, they are skills that the continent needs. Because Africa, as we know, is an open secret that we're a continent that needs to develop rather rapidly. What is your aim? What is the aim of your business, and what difference do you see your business making on the continent?
So our vision is very aspirational. We see technology as a tool that can unlock Africa's economic potential. So really, when we get into organizations, we helping organizations to improve productivity, we bring efficiency, but at the same time, we also are big on equipping people with the skills that are needed, especially in the fourth industrial revolution, so that when businesses do well, when businesses flourish because they're leveraging all these smart technologies, then collectively the economy of Africa will then start doing well. So yeah, so we are taking in bite sizes by supporting individual organizations to be effective, to have efficiency, to be more productive, and obviously to cut costs as well. Technology, one of the advantages of solutions like artificial intelligence and automations is that in the long run, you cut your costs of doing business.
Fantastic. I love this. And perhaps one of the questions you could address for the continent is in relation to accessibility of the technology, not just the technology, the hardware and the software, but the benefits of having such technology for the ordinary person. Technology comes, as it always does, with a lot of buzzwords. And people often complain that it is accessible mostly, sometimes exclusively to the big corporates, that they manage it, they shape it, they control its application, but ultimately it benefits them and consumers by default, perhaps because we hold devices, but not necessarily being transformative to us in the sense that as consumers, we don't end up ultimately being the ones that drive the agency of the technology. So what change or changes can you make? What needs to be done in Africa to move technology from being just a buzzword, especially everyone talks about AI now, and every person has got their own AI note taker. And it sounds great to say AI, but where are we going with it, and how do we democratize this technology that you're talking about and make it to be not so much a monopoly of the big corporates?
It's a very loaded question, and I love it. I love it. Let's unpack that. So, for starters, artificial intelligence is actually beginning to drive everything that we are doing, whether it's the way we do life, the way we work, the way we communicate, the way we engage. We are constantly, if you think about artificial intelligence, it's a tool that we're constantly using. So if you own a smartphone, you're using artificial intelligence outside your realms of even work. Coming here, I used Google Maps. Google Maps is driven by AI. That's how come I was able to get here. It was able to recommend the best, route for me to take and the quickest one. And so you find that on a daily basis, people are using artificial intelligence. So it's no longer necessarily a tool that is used by the big corporates. Yes, the big corporates have shaped some of the tools, but some of the tools are also being shaped by just ordinary, everyday people that have got the skills. And for me, that's where Africa needs to really tap into the talent, especially the talent of the youth that we're sitting with. Africa sits with a lot of problems, and with that, it means we have opportunity to develop solutions that or tools that speak to those problems so that we can solve our own solutions. So one of the big driving agenda that Africa really needs to get on is to upskill its people. We do need people to have the digital skill sets that are needed so that we can be able to create our own solutions. Nothing really stops us from creating our own solutions. We've got the talent, we've got the people of the continent. All it requires is deliberate investment. And as in the next decades, Africa is going to have the biggest workforce because we are sitting with the youngest population. So if that population is well equipped to be able to create solutions that speak to the African problems that we can then export, then you know that Africa is on the right path. And we will then start owning this AI journey. And that's what we need. We need Africa to own the AI agenda. We cannot sit and wait for anybody to come and rescue us because we have what it takes.
And I think I think if you start looking at some of the tech innovations, including the mobile payment systems in places like Kenya, the big example being Pesa, and in places like Ghana, where they are even making chipboards and inputs into technological devices, as well as in Zambia, where I am noticing recently there are quite a lot of developers that are coming up with incredible apps. What you're saying is becoming prophetic in the sense that Africa is becoming competitive in that space. In what other ways are we seeing Africa evolving and becoming more competitive or better than it was, say, for instance, 10 years ago?
Well, the infrastructure side of things is obviously opening up more opportunities. A lot of governments are quite intentional about connectivity and just creating the infrastructure that brings the enablement for people then to be able to thrive in this ecosystem that allows then people to be able to develop the solutions that we are looking for. So yes, the infrastructure still remains a challenge, but also at the same time, we do see quite a number of governments that are quite intentional about closing that gap in terms of being able to provide the infrastructure for the ordinary, the last mile. A lot of countries are talking about the last mile connectivity.
Many people listening to this would like to get in touch with you and start implementing some of the things that you are talking about so they can reap the benefits. How can you simplify what it is that you can do for them? Let's say, for instance, a small business, an SMME, or somebody even intending to get into business. How can you simplify what it is that they will benefit from getting in touch with your business?
So there are quite a number of areas that we can support, either small businesses or big businesses. One of the ways is by simplifying the operations that people do. Before we started here, we were talking about one of a client of ours that we've been working with because they realize the gap that is there from the automation side. They came to us with a problem where they were having just a long period in terms of onboarding their clients from the time a client gets in touch with them to then onboard the client so that they can utilize their solution. We went to them and we co-created a product that required us to restructure or remodel their business so that they were able to then bring in the technology that the clients themselves can be able to interact with. So, for example, one of the things that they would do is to actually go into the field with literally, a paper-based products that they would capture information, then bring it to the office. Then somebody would have to capture that information, then process it, then get in touch with the client. That is such a long process in terms of how you do business. We went in there and we said, we have to remodel this business. There's no need for anybody to be given paperwork, to be signing any form of paperwork. So we create a platform where data can be captured on source by the client. The client themselves can actually input that data, and in real time, that data is then being processed at the back end. And within a short period of time, within minutes, a client can actually be onboarded. So when you look at it from the point of efficiency, we've actually been able to solve an efficiency problem for this client by reducing the amount of time that they respond to client onboarding. So depending on the problems that a client has, we get into the organization, we seek to understand where the pain points are, and together with them, we create a solution and we recommend the specific technology that will then be able to solve that specific problem, that will give the output that the company is looking to achieve. So yes, so our solutions are very bespoke. We customize according to the specific needs that a client has. If it's probably even in advertising, that now people are not spending big budgets to shoot for adverts. There are platforms that are AI driven. We go in there and we train people as well, from people skilling on how to use these platforms. And, all of a sudden, the advert that would take 2 weeks to shoot and the process can be done within minutes. So yes, so our philosophy is really to offer solutions that are very customized depending on the pain points or the needs that the client has.
So the digital divide that you speak about, not just in terms of the gap between smaller businesses and bigger businesses, your SMME sector is less likely to have unlimited access to digital technology and some of the more sophisticated AI agents, for example, compared to your corporate. And in our environment, we may find, for instance, females having less access to digital innovations. Now, talk to me about the affordability of your services, for example, and the accessibility of your services in a continent where we want smaller businesses to play a bigger role. I mean, someone listening to this might be thinking, I definitely wouldn't be able to afford this, and therefore I'll have to make do without. What would you say to someone who is of that view but believes that they could benefit or their business could benefit from some of the interventions that you provide?
That's an absolutely relevant and great question that you bring to the table. And for us, that has actually been part of our journey, understanding where the gap lies, the fact that a lot of SMEs struggle with budget within the African context. So we also bring pay-as-you-go solutions. So we could get into an organization, and we do get into organizations where we build solutions where people, instead of buying a whole platform that costs millions, they can go for a very small solution and they can pay on a monthly basis. So there's the aspect of being able to build for purpose. If you're a small organization, then we've got offerings for small solutions that then opens up that divide for people who have got affordability challenges. They can then go on to pay as you use, which then significantly brings the cost down compared to purchasing platforms up front.
So it's not a question of the haves and the have-nots. It's digital technology that is available to everyone.
Absolutely, absolutely. We're trying our best as a business to be all inclusive. We're trying to bring solutions that just bring as many people in as possible so they can participate. Because really it doesn't help, and we know Africa's biggest employment driver is going to be the small businesses. Most of us have grown around informal businesses. They're the ones that have sustained families. They're the ones that have sustained economies as well. And so I love what some of the businesses are also doing. When I think of businesses like in Nigeria, they've actually gone out there and they've been able to tap into the unbanked communities, for example, the informal sector, by offering loan solutions that use AI-driven data that doesn't necessarily look at the specific assets that somebody has that the traditional banks would be considering. They would look at other forms of data, and they've been able to record 90% or even more than that pay back rates, which has made the businesses more sustainable. So you can see that with artificial intelligence, there's more innovative ways that traditional businesses are being remodeled so that everyday people can be able to access these things, whether it's from getting that tiny small loan to literally go and buy your vegetables to resell and then come and pay back, which a traditional bank would not do. AI, because of data insights, has actually been able to provide that, and there are businesses that are leveraging on that as well.
So, very exciting. There are some schools of thought about artificial intelligence. I am going to ask you, as Sarah Njamu, whether AI is good for the world, and is AI good for Africa? And I love AI for what it does, but you're an expert in the area, and I'd like to get your view, because we are fast approaching, or are we fast approaching AGI, which is artificial general intelligence, also referred to the moment they call singularity, which is when AI becomes autonomous and completely independent of us. And we already know at this point in time that the AI is itself doing its own code. And some of the coding is very difficult even for AI engineers to actually understand how did it get there. Bearing that in mind, and the fact that we always assume that we are able to input into AI certain values and limits, is AI ultimately, particularly as we approach the singularity, good for Africa?
So I think there are many schools of thoughts, and that's a big topic when you start talking about the super intelligence space, and the people were actually predicting that when that happens, the world will come to an end, and so on. I think that's a conversation for later. And obviously, I think from the Africa's point of view, it's good to be aware and to start putting guardrails in place. How do we navigate the future? But for me, I am also very concerned about where we are right now and the problems that we sit with. Is AI good for Africa? It's like asking this question some centuries ago: is electricity good for Africa? Would be the conversation. So definitely there's no stopping AI. AI is here. It's changing everything. There's a reason why we are in the fourth industrial revolution. It is a complete revolution that is turning around economies and the way people do business and the way people interact. So AI definitely is something that Africa needs. And I must add, Africa must be able to develop its own AI tools. And that should be the drive. So it's no longer, I think the question of whether Africa needs AI or not is long past. Like I said, you can't debate whether we needed electricity or not. So yes, AI has got its own challenges that it comes with, and those should be addressed. And that's where issues of ethics and governance comes into play, and hence some African countries have gone ahead and implemented the national AI strategies. And in those strategies, they've been able to spell out. And I must add, not completely, because the AI also continues to change at a rapid pace. So you can't have a 5-year AI strategy, for example. By the time you get there, things will have completely changed. So yes, to answer your question, AI is good for Africa, and Africa must dip into it. Africa must leverage AI. And I dare say Africa must lead the AI charge. Why not? We've got what it takes to be able to lead this revolution. We got to believe in ourselves. We got to believe in the talent that sits on the continent. We should be exporters of AI talent because we're going to be sitting with so much talent. But again, the other conversation is what will happen to this talent if this talent is not equipped with the correct skill sets that are needed to be able to drive this revolution. And I think that's where intentionality should become part of the conversation. Equipping the youth, not just the youth, I mean the workforce, reskilling and upskilling the entire workforce and the young people with the skills that are needed so that we do not sit with a skills deficit. So yes, I hope that answers your question. Does Africa need AI? Yes, Africa does need AI. Has AI got its challenges? Of course, AI has got a lot of challenges that come with it, but it's incumbent upon, the governments, the people, to put all these guardrails in place. In the same way, electricity, when electricity came, guardrails had to be put in place, right? And education had to be there. If you go touching electricity or using electricity inappropriately, to not work to your benefit. But if you use it in the right way, you will benefit from it. So that should be the same concept. That's the way I like to explain AI as it relates to, just everyday conversation, so that everyday people can understand the relationship. So if you think about the way electricity has been framed, we could borrow that and just try and frame our understanding of AI in that aspect. Because in the same way electricity came and changed everything, the way we did life, AI is going to do that more than electricity did.
There are many that argue that AI will have a more dramatic impact on society, how it organizes itself, how it solves problems, than even the discovery of fire, electricity, and the steam engine. So I certainly think there are signs for that already happening. Can you talk a little bit about at what level do you see us as a continent implementing AI? Because Africa is quite a maze. There are so many layers at which one can look at Africa. One would be the African Union. One could look at SADC, Southern African Development Coordination Conference. One could look at sovereign governments within the continent. Bearing in mind the AGA aims include problem solving, which is a big hallmark of AI, amongst other benefits. Also, global competitiveness is a powerful fundamental for the AGA. Now that AI is able to assist in all of these areas with near unerring efficiency in some cases, at what level do you see AI being used? You mentioned driving to work for an individual. But what about government? You mentioned corporate. What about the African Union? What about the African Continental Free Trade Area, where you said earlier that we don't always utilize the talent that we have? Are we, in fact, in a position to utilize AI to unlock some of the opportunities?
So the unlocking is already happening. I think what we need is a cohesive strategy. And I do know that the African Union has got an artificial intelligence strategy that is out there. But what we need is mobilization of cohesion, where we start speaking one language and we start driving this agenda aggressively. There are a lot of solutions out there that are already helping farmers, for example, that have been developed in Kenya, in Zambia, in Nigeria. So these things are already happening. There are already other solutions, within the healthcare. When you think of Rwanda and many other places where AI is already being driven, and sometimes, by just startups, who are just your everyday entrepreneurs. So AI is already underway, it's already being utilized, but what we need is a cohesive platform and a cohesive mobilization and, just countries coming together. And that's what we've been trying to do the past few years with the Future of AI in Africa Global Summit that we hold. And we strategically hold it in Zambia, where we can then be able to bring many players from different countries to come and convene and talk about what this means for us as a continent and how do we drive this agenda forward. So we've been doing that for the past 3 years, and grateful to say, we've been able to create impact. We've had academians come together, we've had business come together, we've had the politicians themselves come to this summit, where we then start engaging. But we need to make it bigger and wider, and just more mobilization of where everybody comes together and drive this with energy, the energy that it requires. No one should really be sitting on the sidelines if we want to see the Africa that we want. Each of us needs to be doing our own bit to contribute to this. So, for example, we can't just leave this agenda to the politicians. The academics should come on board. The business, the private sector, you guys who are running private businesses should be part of this to say, how do we drive this forward so that no one is left behind?
Okay, one final question. This is really fascinating. And educational in a way as well. One final question. You mentioned the Africa that we want to see. So this is the Africa that your business, you in person, are working towards. Can you give me an image, a picture, a description of this Africa that we want to see? Let's say we've arrived at that Africa that we want, the Africa that you're working towards. What does it look like?
So for us, we are looking at the Africa that works, that delivers the services that your citizens require in a very efficient manner. We're looking at the Africa that delivers quality education. So whether it's that child that's sitting in the rural area, or that child that, English is not their first language, are they able to access quality education? And with AI and the solutions that we offer, we're already providing that, where children can be able to access education using the digital platforms for as long as there's connectivity. Within the healthcare sector, we want the doctors and the nurses not to be overburdened, because the bulk of their work is being done by AI. AI is doing all the administrative work, so that the doctors and the nurses then remain to do what they are trained to do, which is care for the people. When it comes to diagnosing diseases, we should be able to do that with efficiency. People should not be flying out of the continent to go and seek medical help. So if you talk about AI that creates abundance, the utopia world, depending on which school of thought. I am an internally optimist person by nature. And so I associate AI with a utopia, where abundance, because so much is being done by the machines, then the human beings have been left to do what they are supposed to do. So if you look at, in the case of doctors or nurses, they're able to then care for people without being burdened by all these processes or admin work that overburden them, and they're able to then see many patients and impact many patients. When you look at access to finance, all of a sudden, because of all these solutions that are AI driven, that gives alternative insights, many people then are able to be included. They're able to access the financial system and be able to help and support and grow their own businesses as compared to the traditional systems as we have seen them. And also just going to that government institution, and your problem is sorted out, not in a day, not in hours, because people are carrying files and so on. The system is so seamless that I don't even have to go to a government department. I can access whatever, solution or whatever needs that I have can be addressed where I am. So those are things that we're looking at when automations are implemented.
Should we be comparing ourselves to anyone else outside of the continent, or should we just say, let's do the best, let's give the services to the people, let's make sure everyone is comfortable? Are there any benchmarks for the Africa that you see?
So we can learn from others, but why not set our own benchmark? Why not set our
But
own
what is that
benchmark?
benchmark, though?
So the benchmark for Africa really is more inclusivity, an Africa that works for everybody, because we're talking about let no one be left behind. So whether we are offering the education services, we want every child to be able to access quality education. If it's healthcare, you want people to be able to access quality healthcare. If it's finance, you want people to be able to access in whatever form it looks like, so that it meets their specific needs.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Really appreciated the discussion. That was Sarah Njamu, the CEO and founder of CompuConnect, one of the dynamic businesses in the AI space, but also in the education space and technology spaces. Congratulations once again, Sarah, on being involved in this.
Thank you.
Give us your thoughts, share your comments on what you think of our discussion here today. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.